Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is that you're joining me and Stephen here on Speaking by Faith. We are continuing our study through the book of John. We are still in John chapter 4, and today we plan on going through verses 43 through verse 50. And if we have enough time, we'll continue on. But other than that, we're so glad to be back this week. I'm really enjoying, we're just back at it. Me and Stephen are back in the saddle again, as he said last week. And I'm glad to be back in the book of John and studying it. I got some new toys to play with and off the logos to read other things, other commentaries, or however you want to say it on the book of John. So anyway, I'm hoping that benefits all of us in our little study that we got going on. Stephen, before I get to reading, do you have anything?
No, I don't. Happy to be here. Gotta be doing it again, man. Learning all kind of good stuff.
That's good. All right, as I said, we are in the book of John, chapter 4, and we'll be reading verse from the New King James Version, starting in verse 43. Now, after the 2 days, he departed from there and went to Galilee, for Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they also had gone to the feast. So Jesus came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he had heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and implored him to come down and heal his son. For he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe." The nobleman said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Jesus said to him, "Go your way, your son lives." So the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him, and he went his way. Anyway, let me get my notes back to where I was. Reason I was trying to avoid going back, I don't really have much.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
On verses 43 through 45. But anyway, where is it? You go ahead and start us off, and I'll just compliment what you're saying, if you don't mind.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, all I've got, it's pretty short and sweet as well. But obviously, the interesting verse to me is verse 44, where it says Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. I think there's no verse that says that in the Bible, but I think he's just alluding to the past prophets. Because if you look at like Hebrews 10, where it says, and 11, where it says that they are not worthy of this world. That's dealing with those who were sojourners and pilgrims and persecuted and sawn in half, all these kind of things. All these prophets, all these men of God that you see in Hebrews 11, are all ones that were just really judged very harshly. They were persecuted. Some of them died as well at the hands of whoever. And so I think it's just Jesus here is carrying on in this verse by even alluding to that he is a prophet, which I think is a very big deal, because that was the Deuteronomy 18:15, where Moses says, there is a greater prophet than I coming in. And then John says the same thing.
Yeah.
He's greater than me. And so Christ himself is, I think here, is even, testifying that he himself is a prophet, which I think is very important. And then he came to Galilee, verse 45, and the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did in Jerusalem at the feast. And that feast, to me, is back in Cana, back in the original wedding feast in John 2, because they also had gone to the feast. And then Jesus came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. There you go. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick. Now this marks the first obstacle of faith. And so this is what it can be called kind of like second-hand faith, because the previous miracle had already spread from turning the water into wine in John 2, 1 through 11. But this one is, and somewhat have suggested that this nobleman was a Roman centurion.
Mm-hmm.
And so this man, though, says that there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he had heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, so he heard about him coming down from Capernaum, from Cana down to Galilee. He went out to him and implored him. That's the idea of falling to his face. Come down to him and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. The fact of the son being at the point of death is pertinent because only the direst necessity could have sent this nobleman to the most despised prophet. Kind of like Naaman going to Elisha there in 2 Kings 5, how he was at the point of leprosy and being put out of his own company and things, and he could have lost everything by being a leper and being excluded, and then he went out because of desperation to Elisha, where then he was told what you must do about going to Jordan. Similar circumstances here. I feel like this man at a very dire straits in his life realizes that he has to go find a prophet. And so Jesus said to him, unless you people see signs and wonders, the only time you see this word in John's gospel, by the way, is this word wonders, you will by no means believe. And so interestingly, Jesus does not address the man, but the you there, unless you people, is plural. And so the second obstacle here is sign demanding faith. Kind of like John 6, he knew that these people were following him not because he was the Messiah, but because of the miracles. And so it's not that it's not God that they were hungry for, but it was a sign or a miracle. And so when Jesus fed the 5,000, which we'll go about later on, the crowds followed him. And so, they said, this is wonderful. Look, he's like a walking cafeteria. And so when Christ began to talk to them about these eternal truths, eating his flesh, drinking his blood, that is, receiving him into their lives, and he says, are you listening to me? And then they left him, John 6. And so this whole thing about looking for a sign and wonder is actually going to dishonor God because we have to hear the word. And God says you have to show more, 1 John 5:15.
Yeah.
You have to show the word. And so, and if you don't, it can become very dangerous because if someone shows you something and then claims it's from God, you have to be careful that it's backed up by the word, because in Acts 8 about Simon the sorcerer, who was going around doing great things, it says that he deceived the great and the least. So he deceived everybody. And then when obviously he was met by the actual works of God through Philip, then was it Peter? It's Peter. Anyway, when he came there, then he realized, I'm my stuff is really not real, and everyone knows it's not real because the word didn't confirm it. And that's Mark 16, 17 to 20 there. And so in the ancient world, according to Borchert inside his commentary, miracles and acts of power were linked to the presence of the miracle worker, but here the healer refused to be present. And so the nobleman said to him, and that was like Christ refused to go actually be at the bedside with the son. And so that's why he said, "Sir, come down before my son dies." And so we see that self-centered faith and strong-willed faith is on display here. This man desired a word keeper, and this is the first level of faith. So Jesus said to him in verse 50, "Go your way, your son lives." And so the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him, and he went his way. And so hearing and obeying is what is demanded. Death and life are connected at Jesus. You see verse 49 and verse 50, my son dies. Verse 49 and verse 50, my son lives. You see it also in Jesus raising the widow's son at Nain, Luke 7, 11 through 17. Jairus' daughter, Luke 8:49-56, and also dead Lazarus in John 11:1-44. And so believed in this context, could be looked at as kind of like a synonym for believe plus healing type thing. Yet what's interesting here is he did not return to his home that day, because when you read on, he must have stayed the night and traveled back as per verse 52, which we'll get there here in a little bit. So Jesus speaks unto life and spirit, John 6:63. And so distance is no barrier to Christ. The boy was perhaps, if you look at what the man's saying, I came over from here, the boy was about 10, 20 miles away when the whole thing happened. So, and this whole thing, goes and it flies in the face today, like modern miracles and everything, we have to be there. And, all this whole thing is just showing very emphatically that Jesus is God in many different ways. And he has power over, distance and disease. I would even say sorrow in this case. So all that to me is all kind of coming together in this incident. What you got?
I see an act of faith a little bit. Because if the man didn't believe, he never would have got up and gone,
Right.
But then you also see, maybe how long, if that would have been me, I think I'd have took off running to my home right then. But as you've already mentioned, it seems like he may have stayed the night there because it was such a long journey, and it was, back then it was really dangerous to be traveling at night. But anyway, back up in 45, we see what kind of faith that you've already hit on this a good bit. These Galileans, having seen all, so really they have, what kind of faith do they have in Jesus? They have they're walking by sight. They want to see that. They always want to see something. And again, we kind of see another contrast between these Galileans, these Jews, versus we just, a few verses back, we was in Samaria, and what sign did Jesus do there for them? What did they see other than hearing the testimony of the woman? And then when they come out to him at the well, there was no miracle, no great sign that he did there, right? And they believed on him. So we see another contrast between the Jews and the Samaritans. The Galileans received him, but their welcome was just based on what he did rather than who he was. The Samaritans accepted him as the Messiah, but later on the Galileans received him just because of the signs and stuff that they had saw. So we see two different types of faith here. There's some that just want to follow Jesus and for the things that he can do for us, and he can do a whole lot for us, but that doesn't need to be our only reason for following him. We need to have the faith like the Samaritans, have faith in him, follow his word, because he loves us. He loves us, and that should be the reason why we follow him, because he loves us and we love him, not because he can do some great things for us or he can provide all these things. Throughout the book, the Galileans, we'll notice how things change for them. And like we've already mentioned here in verse 45, they are enthusiastic about him because of the signs. But as you go on through verse 48, they really didn't honor him. And then on in chapter 6 and verse 41, they're complaining about Jesus. And then in verse 66 of chapter 6, eventually they withdraw from him in large numbers. They leave him. And Jesus is not what they wanted. They wanted that warlord. They wanted someone that they, and we'll get it. When we start getting to the next few miracles, I think it's the next chapter. Yeah, the next chapter is where they try to force, take him by force, and that's what they wanted. And Jesus made it clear that's not what he's here for, and they just kind of they leave him. They leave him. Where did you get down to talking?
50.
50. That's what I thought. I'm the same as you. You people. He wasn't specifically talking directly to the poor nobleman. He was talking as John. As a whole, these Jews. Y'all always need to see something. Another neat thing is we see the Bible's always geographically correct. Come up and come down. That whole thing. I had it underlined. I've lost it, and I was just looking at it because I thought it was neat. All right, from looking at a map, you could think that the royal officials should have requested that Jesus come up to Capernaum, which is northeast of Cana, not come down. However, Capernaum was by the lake, and Cana was located on the surrounding higher ground of Galilee. As far as I know it, everywhere in the Bible is always geographically correct, always. And I always thought that was a cool thing, that it's always geographically correct. Again, we see this nobleman, his faith was not in Jesus as a person, but in the power he believed Jesus could wield to heal his dying son. You've already mentioned that Jesus, he showed them real true power of saving, because he didn't even go. He just spoke and it happened. That was neat. That word sign, you've already hit it on that. It's the typical word that's used by John, and it emphasizes that a miracle points beyond itself. I had a note here. I was going to try to tie in baptism in here. Some people, and I've mentioned many before, about the blood and the, they don't see it. They got to see it. Well, I mean, you don't need to see that blood. Or some people try to say baptism is just a sign. That's that's not. I'm trying to remember I'm trying to read my chicken scratch here. Is what I'm trying to do. Some today, it's just a sign, some sign. It's more. And I know this isn't in the Bible. This isn't what we're talking about, context. But that's how this word sign, it always emphasizes something, points something beyond itself. Well, baptism does. It is something more. It points to something beyond itself. It's something it's something serious. But I think that's all I really have.
Well, let me pick up here in verse 51, and we might be able to finish it. It says, now as he was now going down, his servants met him, it says the nobleman, and told him, saying, your son lives. Now there's a time difference here. According to the Jewish division of the day, this perhaps could have been said in the evening of the same day, about 6 o'clock or so. And so the healing took place soon after noon, and probably the father set out immediately for home. According to our reckoning of day, a night must have intervened, which would give a strange length of time for a distance of some 8 or 10 hours. Now there's no word for recover. All that we know is that it says that he lives, which implies that he was healed or he recovered. And die obviously implies sickness or death. Normally, the word live is translated as live or life 124 times in the New Testament. Verse 52, then he inquired of them the hour when he got better. And they said to him, yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him. So then we see how the kid was dying. He had a fever. Verse 52. And so the father knew that it was at the same hour in which Jesus said to him, your son lives. Zoe, Same word used for lives or recovering in the ESV. And he himself believed in his whole household. So when did he believe? At the hour Jesus spoke.
That's right.
The miracle performed confirmed the word that Jesus spoke. Mark 16, 17, 20. True faith is showing here, believing in Jesus. Verse 54, and that goes into also obedience. This again, it's the second sign that Jesus did when he had come out of Judea into Galilee. So there seems to be a rhythm of two accounts of miracles between Cana of Galilee and this one. Both were third-day scenes. John 2:1, and verse 43 says, now after 2 days. So both the third-day scenes. When Mary came to Jesus and told him they had no wine, but he rebuked her. John 2:4. And so when the nobleman came to Christ and asked him to heal the sick, the Lord rebuked him. John 4:48. In each case, the obedient response made by those whom the Lord commanded occurred. John 2:7, 4:50. Both miracles, we see the Word at work. Jesus only spoke. Both narratives mention the servant's knowledge of the matter. John 2:9, John 4:51, which is very important. Because the servants are the ones that know what's happening more than the actual subject of the miracle. Those who saw the miracle believed. John 2:11, John 4:53, and now both end in similar endings from the writer. John 2:11, as this one says that Christ did as he was going to do, and so you see some similarities here between both. That's all I've got.
I got a few things here.
What you got?
Well, there's some. I guess some people try to say that this account was the same account that was the centurion in Matthew 8:8. There's two different. I done messed up again. I don't know what. This is why I quit writing my notes and typing.
There you
go. Anyway, I wrote this in big letters on the side here, so I do know this. Around verse 48, I have it written: "Have faith in the word of God." Jesus' words was a challenge to this man's faith. There was no, we've mentioned, there was no sign. There was no sign, no visible sign given, just his word. This official, this nobleman, he had to take Jesus at his word, and he departed. And you see a progression in his faith, a progression of faith based on signs and wonders to a faith that trusted in Jesus' word. And I have this really underlined, how sometimes you find something really important, you want to make it, I remember that. That's the faith that Jesus seeks out.
Right.
And I want to say it was Dan Winkler. He preached at Polishing the Pulpit. This word believing or having faith. People try to what does that really mean? It's real. Well, you accept it, you trust it, and you act on it. Mm-hmm. And you see that right here. That's having a faith in Jesus Christ. But yeah, that's the kind of faith that he wants us to have. We don't need to see some sort of miracle or some sort of whatever. We just need to have faith that if Jesus says it's going to happen, it happens.
Right.
And I will point that out back to a lot of people that protest against baptism and being washed in the blood of the Lamb. Well, I just because I can't see the blood in that water does not mean that it's not there, because, like I said, by faith, I know it is because Jesus tells us that it is.
Yeah.
That's why I am with that.
And it is interesting about the word of Jesus and being as powerful as it is, Because, and even Hebrews 1, verse 3, where it says that the world is upheld by the word of his power. So that tells, even all of creation itself is held together by the very word of Jesus. And so, it's no wonder then that he has so much authority in every area.
Yeah. Guy in Woods has a good quote here about this progression of faith by the official, and I think it's very well put. He says, the nobleman first believed in the power of Jesus, then the efficacy of his word, and finally on the Lord himself. Before he believed about Jesus, now he believed on Jesus.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
I really like that quote from him. That's all I have. We don't have enough time to really get into what I had prepared.
Well, we finished, didn't we?
Yeah, we're finished. Yeah, we did finish. Actually, we got further than we thought. Remember, we was only going to go to what did we say? 53.
Yeah, 50. Yeah, okay, 50.
I can't. We went further than we said.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Yeah, next week I got a little bit of. I'm gonna try to have a little bit of application for this chapter, and then
okay.
something quick, and then we'll go over. That's really all it really was. Is kind of gonna be an overview of the whole chapter.
Oh yeah.
We can do that next week, and then get into chapter 5.
Yeah, it'd be good.
I'm really excited to get into the next few chapters because a lot goes on, man. When he starts doing these, I say big miracles. I really liked it. Or how's Cliff Goodwin? He calls these not just a miracle. He calls them episodes.
Yeah.
Miracle episodes, because once you start really studying these miracles that Jesus starts doing here in the next chapter, there's really a lot of small little miracles that maybe we just kind of overlook. But anyways, I'm excited about the next 2 chapters.
They're really good, really interesting stuff.
Because a lot starts happening, a lot starts happening. John dies. It's a lot of stuff happens.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, you want to close us down for the day?
Yeah, I'm glad you helped us out today with all your notes. I didn't have much on this section.
Well, that's all right. Let's do what I can.
No, guys, we're so glad that we're blessed to do this with everyone. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't have they're not blessed enough to be able to do this type of stuff, get online and study with each other and broadcast it out to everyone. Me and Stephen are, and I'm blessed. I know Stephen's blessed by doing it. We just hope that y'all are benefiting in some way from the study that we're doing. We are just men, so get your Bibles out, check us. I laughed a while ago. I forget what you misspoke. You said something.
Who knows? And
then I got to laughing this morning. I was trying to get God out of my mouth, and I kept saying Jesus, and I said, God, Jesus, they're all one and the same. That's it. Anyway, but anyways, we're just men. We mess up, so if we might miss, put the wrong name in there. Don't put us on the chopping block and cut us up. We're just
no.
two simple guys here.
Yeah, don't do that.
Anyways, we love y'all. Keep watching, keep supporting, like and share it. Send us some questions if you have them. Other than that, that's all I got. Pray.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Pray.
Yeah. Yep. Always remember to pray. Well, that's all I've got on my end as well. Thank you for being here again once more. And we hope that you'll join us again next time for another inclusion into our study. And I know that this is a grand, glorious study. And John has been called the glory of the Gospels. And so hopefully we'll continue on to look at that as we go together. That's all I've got. We'll close it down. And we hope that you have a great rest of your day.
All right, man.